There's a pattern in infrastructure history that has plunged 5 advanced civilizations into darkness over the last 2,000 years, turning thriving societies into ghost towns where the hum of electricity once powered progress, innovation, and daily life. And right now, in 2025, the United States power grid, the single largest and most complex machine ever built by humanity, spanning over 200,000 miles of high-voltage transmission lines, powering 330 million people, and carrying more electricity than the next 3 countries combined, is following that exact same 6-stage blackout sequence, step by step, failure by failure, almost like we're reading from a script etched in corroded copper wires, overloaded transformers, and emergency decrees that no one wants to admit are coming. This isn't some distant future dystopia. It's happening in real time, with warning lights flashing across dashboards from California to Texas, from the Northeast to the Midwest. And the math doesn't lie. The system is on the brink, and the collapse isn't a question of if, but when, and how dark it will get. Let's start with the first historical collapse to understand the blueprint. In 476 AD, Rome wasn't just an empire, it was the pinnacle of engineering marvels. The Romans had constructed over 1,000 miles of aqueducts that delivered fresh water to a city of 1 million people, public baths that ran hot and cold, street lamps fueled by olive oil that lit the forums at night, and even underfloor heating systems in villas that kept the elite warm through winters. The infrastructure was so advanced that it made modern cities look primitive in comparison for water distribution alone. But by the late 400s, the maintenance had stopped. The aqueducts, some over 300 years old, were cracking, lead pipes were poisoning the water they carried, and barbarian invasions had cut supply lines for repairs. The government, bankrupt from endless wars and corruption, diverted what little tax revenue remained to paying off legions rather than fixing the pipes. One by one, sections failed. A single vandal cut in the Aqua Claudia aqueduct led to a 30% drop in water pressure across the city. Fountains dried up, baths closed, riots erupted over rationed water. Within a generation, the population plummeted by 90%, and Europe entered what we now call the Dark Ages, 1,000 years without reliable public water or light. Rome didn't fall in a day. It faded outage by outage. Fast forward to 1940, and Britain stood as the heart of a global empire where the sun never set, with an electrical grid that was the envy of the world. London was a city that never slept, powered by massive coal-fired plants built in the late 1800s, with transmission lines crisscrossing the countryside to factories producing tanks, planes, and munitions for World War II. The national grid, formed in 1926, synchronized power across the island, allowing black start capabilities and redundancy that seemed unbreakable. But the plants were aging, many over 50 years old, with sagging lines and no major upgrades since the Great War. Politicians prioritized war bonds over infrastructure bonds. Then came the Blitz. Hitler's Luftwaffe targeted the grid deliberately, bombing over 400 substations in the first months alone. One hit on the Battersea Power Station plunged half of London into darkness. Blackout laws were enforced, no streetlights, curtains drawn, car headlights painted over, factories ran on skeleton shifts, children were evacuated to the countryside because cities became death traps at night. Crime surged 300% in the shadows. The grid held, barely, thanks to Empire resources funneled in, but the war exposed the fragility. And post-war, the empire collapsed, leaving Britain with a patched system that took decades to modernize. Now jump to 2019 in Lebanon, once called the Paris of the Middle East, with Beirut's Corniche lit up like a jewel, casinos buzzing, and a grid that promised 24/7 power, even during civil wars. The system was built in the 1960s with French and American help, 2 massive plants at Zouk and Gier supplying most of the country. But corruption was endemic. Politicians siphoned off billions in fuel subsidies. One cartel alone stole an estimated $40 billion over 20 years by importing diluted fuel that damaged turbines. Maintenance? Non-existent. Plants ran at 50% efficiency. Spare parts were sold on the black market. Then the economy imploded. Refugees from Syria added 1.5 million people straining the load. Crypto miners set up farms in abandoned buildings, sucking gigawatts. Fuel imports stopped when dollars ran out. One turbine at Zouk failed in October 2019, and the entire national grid cascaded into blackout. Beirut went dark for 22 hours a day. Hospitals ran diesel generators until fuel ran dry. Patients died on operating tables when backups failed. People fought over generator access. Mafia controlled diesel distribution at $1,500 per family per year. The August 2020 port explosion was the final spark in a powder keg of neglect. 6 years later, in 2025, Lebanon still averages 2 to 4 hours of state power daily. Brain drain. Over 1 million skilled workers emigrated. The grid didn't explode, it rotted from within. In 2025, South Africa provides the most current warning. A nation that was once Africa's industrial powerhouse, with Eskom generating enough power to export to neighbors. The utility built massive coal plants in the 1970s and 80s, including the world's largest dry-cooled station at Medupi. But by 2008, the plants were 40-plus years old. Coal silos cracked, boilers leaking. Corruption under state capture saw $1 billion a year looted through inflated coal contracts to politically connected families. Maintenance backlogs hit 100 billion rand. Demand exploded with urbanization, data centers for global tech firms, and electrification programs. No new nuclear since Coburg in 1984. One turbine failure at Kusile in 2022 triggered Stage 6 load shedding, 8 hours off daily. By 2025, Stage 8, 12 hours without power, traffic lights out led to over 1,000 road deaths annually from accidents. Businesses closed at 4 p.m., GDP shrank 5% in 1 year. Mines halted shifts, hospitals rationed ventilators. South Africans call it the new normal, but it's the pattern accelerating. And in California, 2025, the canary in the coal mine for America. PG&E's grid serves 16 million people with lines snaking through dry forests. Substations average 47 years old, wooden poles from the 1950s ignited by sparks. The utility paid $30 billion in dividends to shareholders while skimping on fireproofing. One spark in 2018 caused the Camp Fire, 85 dead, Paradise Town erased. Response? Public safety power shutoffs, PSPS. In 2025, winds trigger shutoffs for 3 million people at a time. People charge phones in Starbucks lots. Tesla Powerwalls sell out in hours. EV owners can't charge. Businesses lose millions per event. It's preemptive blackout to avoid liability, but it's stage 5 in action, 5 times. 5 advanced grids. Rome in 476. Britain in 1940. Lebanon in 2019. South Africa in 2025. California in 2025. 5 total blackouts, each following the exact same 6-stage collapse cycle, from aging bones to political rot, demand surges to cascading failures, preemptive cuts to total darkness. And here's the part that should terrify every American watching this. The United States as a whole has already completed 5 of the 6 stages nationally. We're not on the edge. We're in the acceleration phase of the Great American Blackout, and the triggers are lining up faster than anyone in Washington or the utility boardrooms wants to admit. Before we map the stages to the USA, you need to grasp what a full national grid blackout would look like. Not Hollywood explosions, but cold, hard reality. Hospitals have diesel backups for 4 to 96 hours max. After that, ventilators stop, surgeries cancel, refrigerated meds spoil. Gas stations need electricity for pumps. No gas, no escape. Water treatment plants fail. No potable tap water after 24 hours. Sewage backs up. ATMs and card readers go dark. Cash only and banks close. Internet and cell towers die after 8 to 12 hours on battery. Traffic signals out create instant gridlock. Accidents pile up. Refrigerators warm. Food spoils in 24 hours, leading to mass waste and shortages. A 72-hour blackout sparks unrest, looting in cities, price gouging. A 7-day blackout brings fires from candles and generators, exodus from urban areas. A 30-day blackout, societal reset, supply chains, collapse, martial law, population displacement. The Congressional EMP Commission estimated a Carrington-level solar flare could cause $2 trillion in damage and take 4 to 10 years to repair. Cyber attacks from Russia or China could do the same in minutes. This isn't fear-mongering, it's the pattern repeating. Stage 1 of every blackout is aging infrastructure and chronic underinvestment, and the bones of the system rot while everyone looks away. In Rome, aqueducts over 300 years old with no repairs. In Britain, coal plants from the 1890s, lines sagging like old skin. Lebanon's 1960s plants lost 50% efficiency from neglect. South Africa's Eskom fleet averaged 40-plus years with cracked silos and a 100 billion rand backlog. California's substations at 47 years, wooden poles igniting forests. The pattern is universal. Over 60% of assets past their design life. Capital expenditures less than depreciation, funds diverted to dividends or political pet projects. Now look at the USA in 2025. The average age of a power transformer is 40 years. Most were installed in the 1970s and 80s, designed for 30 to 40-year lifespans. Over 70% of transmission lines are overhead, vulnerable to wind, ice, fire. The Department of Energy estimates a $2.5 trillion upgrade backlog just to maintain current reliability, let alone meet future demand. Utilities spend more on stock buybacks than burying lines. Check. Stage 1 complete. Stage 2 is political mismanagement and corruption. The grid turns into a political football and cash extraction machine. Roman senators sold water rights for personal villas. British privatization in the 1930s prioritized profits over resilience. Lebanon's $40 billion fuel scam funded politician yachts while plants rusted. South Africa's state capture looted $1 billion annually via crony coal deals. PG&E in California funneled $30 billion to shareholders instead of undergrounding lines. The pattern: regulated monopolies with no market discipline, lobbying trumping engineering, short-term gains over long-term stability. In the USA, 2025, utilities spent $128 million on lobbying from 2020 to 2024 alone, blocking interstate transmission projects that could balance renewable intermittency. FERC regulations stifle new builds. The fight between fossil and green lobbies means nothing gets approved. State public utility commissions approve rate hikes for dividends, not hardening. Federal funds from the infrastructure bill bogged down in bureaucracy, less than 10% spent by 2025. Corruption? Look at insider trading scandals in energy markets or subsidies funneled to connected firms. Check. Stage 2 locked in. Stage 3 is demand explosion meeting supply collapse. You pile on new loads without adding capacity, creating a ticking bomb. Rome's population doubled with no new aqueducts. Britain's war factories ran 24/7 on WWI-era plants. Lebanon added refugees and crypto farms while fuel dried up. South Africa electrified townships and attracted data centers, but built no new baseload since 1984. California mandated EVs and heat pumps while closing Diablo Canyon nuclear. The pattern: demand up 50% in a decade, supply flat or declining, leading to razor-thin margins. USA 2025, the EIA projects electricity, demand up 18% by 2030, driven by AI data centers alone consuming 8% of total load, equivalent to adding another California. EV sales mandate 50% by 2030, adds gigawatts. Heat pumps replace gas in millions of homes, but supply? We need 500,000 megawatt new capacity, only 90,000 megawatt in the pipeline, mostly intermittent wind/solar without storage. Nuclear plants closing faster than opening. Natural gas pipelines blocked by NIMBY and regs. Margins in Texas hit 5% last summer. Any hotter? And blackouts. Check. Stage 3 underway. Stage 4 brings cascading failures and emergency measures. The system starts breaking in chains and quick fixes fail. One vandal cut in Rome dropped 30% water. One substation in Britain darkened London. One plant in Lebanon blacked out the nation. One turbine in South Africa triggered Stage 6. One spark in California killed 85. Pattern: single points of failure, no N1 redundancy, events that should be contained spread like wildfire. USA 2025, Texas February 2021, winter storm cascaded, 246 dead, $200 billion damage, 10 million without power. California's PSPS preemptively cuts 3 million to avoid fires. Since 2000, 9 of 11 major U.S. blackouts were cascading, from the 2003 Northeast blackout affecting 50 million to the 2022 Winter Storm Elliott. Cyber intrusions up 300%. Chinese hackers mapped the grid. One transformer explosion in a key hub could take months to replace due to global shortages. Check. Stage 4 active. Stage 5 is public safety shutoffs and social breakdown. They cut power deliberately to prevent worse, but life grinds to a halt. Rome rationed water, sparking riots. Britain mandated blackout curtains. Crime exploded 300%. Lebanon's generator mafias fought street wars. Hospitals begged diesel. South Africa's traffic deaths soared over 1,000 per year from dark intersections. Businesses shuttered early. California's PSPS will de-energize your home to save the grid. Pattern: preemptive outages become routine. Economy contracts, society phrase. USA 2025. PSPS expanded to 15 states from Oregon to Florida. Texas, summer rolling blackouts for conservation. New York City's demand response forces AC shutdowns and heat waves. Businesses install generators at $100,000 plus each. Schools cancel classes during shutoffs. Elderly die from heat without power. Social media fills with hashtag power outrage. Check. We are firmly in Stage 5. Stage 6 is total collapse and a new dark age. The grid is abandoned. Society fragments into microsystems or chaos. Rome. Population down 90%. 1,000 years without public utilities. Britain survived the war but lost empire. Grid patched with rationing. Lebanon. Still 20-plus hours. Dark daily in 2025. 1 million emigrated. South Africa. Stage 8 permanent. GDP perpetually shrunk. Industrial flight. California projection. If PG and E bankruptcy cascades 10 to 20 million in prolonged dark. Pattern: central grid fails, locals go off-grid with solar/generators, wealthy enclaves versus everyone else, national cohesion breaks. USA future: 1. Carrington solar flare hits 90% of high voltage transformers, irreparable for years. One coordinated cyber attack from nation states does the same. Microgrids boom, but 50% of population can't afford. Food shortages, water crises, mass migration from cities. A new dark age, not medieval, but digital. Smartphones useless. EVS bricks. Economy resets to cash and barter. Now, the USA 2025 timeline, this isn't speculation. It's extrapolation from the pattern and current data. Q4 2025 to 2026. AI data center boom adds 10% national demand overnight as hyperscalers like Microsoft, Google, Amazon build farms in Virginia, Iowa, Texas. July 2026. Texas hits record heat. ERCOT demands exceed supply by 15 gigawatts, rolling blackouts for 10 million lasting days. October 2026. California wildfire season. Mega PSPS for 5 million in Northern California, extended to weeks due to wind forecasts. 2027, national grid emergency declared after a cyber intrusion or storm cascades across the Midwest ISO, rolling blackouts in 20 states, foresee mandates, conservation nationwide. 2028, microgrid revolution, 50 million Americans off-grid with home solar, batteries, but inequality skyrockets. Rural areas thrive, urban poor suffer. How to protect yourself before stage 6, practical no-nonsense steps. First, home solar plus battery storage. Invest in Tesla Powerwall, Enphase systems, or Generac whole home batteries for at least 3-day autonomy. Cover essentials like fridge, lights, well pump, medical devices. Second, dual fuel generator. Propane/natural gas backup that runs 1 to 2 weeks on tanks. Store 500 gallons safely. Third, water independence. Rainwater collection systems. Deep well hand pumps. Berkey filters for 1,000 gallon storage. Fourth, non-perishable food. 90-day supply per person, rice, beans, canned goods, MRES rotated annually. Fifth, community microgrid. Partner with neighbors for shared solar arrays and battery banks, pool costs, increase resilience. Sixth, EMP hardened tech. Faraday cages for radios, solar chargers, hand crank emergency radios, paper maps, cash and small bills. 5 grids went dark before us. Rome thought its engineering was eternal. Britain believed empire would save it. Lebanon ignored the scams until the lights failed. South Africa pretended load shedding was temporary. California cuts power to prevent disaster, but accelerates the breakdown. Each time they said, "We're too advanced for this. We have backups," it's just a short-term issue. They were wrong every single time. The pattern is physical law. Copper fatigues at a predictable rate. Transformers have finite cycles. Demand curves don't bend to politics. Stage 5 is here, nationwide. Stage 6 is 24 to 36 months away. Triggered by one spark, one storm, one hack, one flare. When your fridge's hum stops in the middle of the night, your phone screen goes black, and an eerie silence falls over the entire neighborhood because every house is dark. You'll remember this video and wish you'd prepared. Subscribe right now, because when the Great American Blackout hits, and it will, you'll need to know exactly how to survive 30 days, 90 days, or longer without the grid. How to keep your family safe, fed, hydrated, and informed in a world suddenly unplugged. The darkness isn't coming from afar. It's already loading, substation by substation, wire by wire.